Most people believe danger announces itself loudly. A fire burns, a storm roars, an alarm sounds. But some dangers arrive quietly. They sit in your room every night. They rest beside your bed. They glow softly in the darkness while you sleep. And the strange truth is that millions of people willingly place these objects close to their bodies without ever questioning them. As we grow older, our bodies become more sensitive to the environment around us. Sleep becomes more fragile. The nervous system becomes more delicate. The body takes longer to repair itself. Yet many people unknowingly surround themselves with sources of constant stimulation, artificial energy, and subtle radiation that disturb the very peace the body needs to heal. From a Buddhist perspective, and this is deeply connected to one of the central teachings of wisdom, awareness. The Buddha repeatedly reminded his followers that suffering often arises not from what we know, but from what we remain unaware of. What harms us quietly is often what we ignore. Tonight we are going to explore 7 important lessons about the silent objects many people keep near their beds, not through fear, but through awareness. Because awareness is the beginning of wisdom, and wisdom protects both the mind and the body. If you are over 60, these lessons become even more important. Your body deserves an environment of calm, silence, and restoration. Yet many bedrooms today have become places of constant invisible activity, signals, electric currents, artificial light, devices that were never designed for the delicate rhythms of deep sleep. So before tonight ends, it may be worth asking yourself one simple question. What is sitting quietly beside your bed right now? 1. The Buddha taught that a peaceful mind needs a peaceful environment. One of the most overlooked teachings of the Buddha is that the environment surrounding us quietly shapes the condition of the mind. Most people think their thoughts come only from inside their head. They believe stress, restlessness, or calm are purely mental states created by personality or circumstance. But the Buddha understood something far more subtle. The mind does not exist in isolation. It constantly absorbs what surrounds it. Sounds influence the mind. Light influences the mind. Objects influence the mind. Even the unseen atmosphere of a room can influence how peaceful or restless a person feels. And this is why ancient Buddhist monasteries were designed with extreme simplicity. If you had walked into a monk's sleeping area hundreds of years ago, you would have been surprised by how little was there. A simple mat, a thin blanket, perhaps a small wooden stand for a lamp, nothing else. No glowing lights, no mechanical sounds, no piles of possessions. The room itself felt quiet before the monk even closed his eyes. This simplicity was not about poverty or deprivation. It was about understanding the deep relationship between environment and consciousness. The Buddha observed that the mind is like water. When water is constantly disturbed, it cannot reflect clearly. But when water becomes still, it becomes transparent, calm, deep. In the same way, when the environment surrounding a person is calm, the mind settles naturally. But when the environment is filled with stimulation, signals, noise, and activity, the mind remains subtly disturbed even during rest. Now consider the modern bedroom. Many bedrooms today no longer resemble places designed for rest. Instead, they resemble small command centers filled with devices. A smartphone sits beside the pillow. A smartwatch charges beside the bed. A tablet rests on the nightstand. Cables run across the floor. A television glows in the corner. A Wi-Fi router quietly transmits signals through the walls. smart speakers wait for voice commands. Every one of these objects may seem harmless by itself, but together they create an atmosphere of constant invisible activity. Signals travel through the air. Devices communicate with distant servers. Notifications arrive at all hours. And even when the room appears silent, the environment is filled with digital movement. Most people never stop to question this. They assume it is normal. But from the perspective of Buddhist awareness, something important has been lost: stillness. The Buddha emphasized that stillness is not merely the absence of movement, it is a quality of the entire environment. When monks prepared for sleep, the monastery itself would gradually become quieter. Lamps were dimmed, conversations stopped, activities ended, the entire space began to settle. This allowed the body and mind to follow the same rhythm. But in modern life, the bedroom rarely settles. Even when we lie down, the room continues operating. Phones continue receiving signals. Routers continue transmitting data. Devices remain powered and active. Small lights blink, or screens glow faintly. Even if we do not consciously pay attention to these things, the body still registers the presence of activity. This becomes especially important as we grow older. When we are young, the body is incredibly resilient. It can tolerate noise. It can tolerate late nights. It can tolerate stimulation. But after 60, the body begins to change. Sleep becomes lighter. The nervous system becomes more sensitive. Recovery takes longer. A small disturbance that once meant nothing can now disrupt the entire night. Many older adults notice this without fully understanding why. They say things like, "I wake up more easily now," or "My sleep is not as deep as it used to be." Part of this change is natural aging, but part of it is also the environment surrounding the body. When the room contains constant stimulation, the mind never fully releases its alertness. It remains partially awake, scanning the environment even while sleeping. The Buddha often warned that human beings easily adapt to unhealthy conditions simply because they become familiar. If everyone around us lives the same way, we assume that way must be normal. But normal does not always mean healthy. One of the most powerful acts of wisdom is simply observing the conditions of your own life. Look around your bedroom tonight. Notice what is there. How many devices surround your bed? How many lights remain on? How many cables and electronics occupy the small space meant for rest? Ask yourself honestly, does this room feel peaceful, or does it feel quietly busy? When the Buddha encouraged people to simplify their surroundings, not because objects are evil, but because simplicity protects clarity. When unnecessary objects are removed, something remarkable happens. The mind relaxes. The room begins to feel open. The body senses that the environment is safe and quiet. Sleep arrives more easily. Deep rest becomes possible again. Many people think improving their health requires complicated solutions, special supplements, advanced treatments, expensive equipment. But sometimes, the most powerful change is incredibly simple. Remove what disturbs peace. Turn the bedroom back into what it was always meant to be. A place where the body can let go of the day. A place where the mind no longer needs to remain alert. A place where the natural rhythm of rest can return. And the Buddha once said that wisdom begins with seeing clearly. And sometimes seeing clearly means recognizing that the modern world has quietly filled our most intimate spaces with constant activity. The bedroom should be the final refuge of stillness. When that stillness returns, the mind begins to settle. And when the mind settles, the body finally receives the rest it has been waiting for. 2. Many people sleep next to their phone without questioning it. One of the most common objects people keep beside their bed today is the smartphone. For many people, it has become almost unthinkable to sleep without it nearby. The phone sits on the nightstand. Sometimes it sits directly beside the pillow. Sometimes it is even placed under the pillow itself. It glows softly in the darkness. It vibrates with notifications. It connects continuously to cellular towers, Wi-Fi networks, and countless background applications. And yet, most people never stop to question whether this habit actually supports their well-being. The Buddha often warned about unconscious habits. He explained that human beings easily fall into routines simply because everyone else around them is doing the same thing. When a behavior becomes common in society, people stop examining it. They assume it must be normal. But normal does not always mean wise. In the Buddha's teachings, awareness begins the moment a person pauses and asks a simple question. Is this helping my mind, or is it disturbing it? For most of human history, the place where people slept was protected from interruption. When night came, the world became quiet, communication stopped, and there were no messages arriving from distant places, no sounds calling for attention, no glowing screens pulling the mind back into activity. Nighttime meant something very different. It meant the mind could finally release its responsibilities and enter true rest. But today the phone has quietly followed us into the most intimate space of our lives. Even when we believe we are resting, the phone remains active. Messages arrive, updates download, applications refresh, signals travel constantly between the device and the outside world. The human mind is extremely sensitive to potential interruption. Even if the phone remains silent, the mind knows it is there. And because the mind knows it is there, a part of our awareness remains alert. What if a message arrives? What if someone calls? And what if something important happens during the night? This subtle anticipation prevents the mind from fully surrendering to deep sleep. The Buddha described the mind as something that becomes peaceful only when it feels completely safe from disturbance. When a person meditates deeply, one of the first things they notice is how easily the mind becomes distracted by even the smallest signal. A sound in the distance, a flicker of light, a vibration. The mind immediately turns toward it. The same process happens while we sleep. Even if the phone does not wake us directly, its presence keeps the mind in a state of partial readiness. And this effect becomes stronger as we age. After 60, the nervous system becomes more sensitive. Sleep cycles become lighter. The brain spends less time in the deepest restorative stages of sleep. And even small interruptions can pull the mind back toward wakefulness. Many older adults say something interesting. They say they wake up several times during the night without knowing why. They simply feel restless. They turn over. They check the clock. Sometimes they instinctively reach for their phone, but often the habit itself is part of the disturbance. The Buddha taught that attachment often disguises itself as convenience. The phone beside the bed feels convenient. It is used as an alarm. It is used to check the time. It is used for late-night scrolling, messages, or news. But convenience can quietly become dependence, and dependence keeps the mind tied to activity. From a Buddhist perspective, the bedroom should be a sanctuary from the noise of the world, a place where the mind knows it no longer needs to respond to anything. When the phone remains beside the bed, the world never truly leaves the room. The outside world continues whispering for attention. This is why many meditation teachers today recommend something extremely simple. Move the phone away from the bed, not necessarily out of the house, not even out of the room. Simply place it far enough away that it is no longer within reach. Place it across the room, or on a distant table, or even better, outside the bedroom entirely. Something surprising happens when people do this. The mind begins to relax. The constant urge to check the device disappears. Sleep becomes deeper, and the first moments of the morning feel calmer. Instead of immediately reaching for the phone, the mind wakes up slowly and naturally. The Buddha often spoke about reclaiming awareness in small, everyday actions. We do not need dramatic life changes to become more mindful. Sometimes we only need to change one simple habit. The phone beside the pillow is not something most people ever questioned. But awareness begins with questioning. Does this object truly belong beside the place where I rest? Or has it quietly taken a position there simply because modern life made it feel normal? The Buddhist path always encouraged gentle simplicity, not extreme rejection of technology, not fear of modern tools, but wisdom about where those tools belong. A phone can be useful during the day, but the mind deserves a few hours each night when nothing in the world can demand its attention. When the room becomes quiet again, something inside the mind also becomes quiet. And that quiet is where real rest begins. 3. Constant signals. Keep the mind from fully resting. Many people believe that once the lights are off and their eyes are closed, the body automatically enters deep rest. But the truth is more complex. Sleep is not simply the absence of activity. It is a delicate process where the mind slowly releases its awareness of the outside world. The body begins repairing itself. The nervous system quiets down. Breathing becomes slower and deeper. For this process to happen properly, the brain must feel that the environment is safe and calm. If the surroundings remain full of subtle stimulation, the mind never completely lets go. In the Buddha's teachings, rest and stillness were deeply connected. Monks were encouraged to create environments where the senses could settle. When the senses settle, the mind follows. But modern bedrooms often contain something very different: invisible activity. One of the most common examples of this is the Wi-Fi router. In many homes, the router runs 24 hours a day. It continuously sends and receives signals so that phones, televisions, computers, and other devices can stay connected to the internet. Most people rarely think about it. The router sits quietly in a corner or on a shelf, blinking softly while transmitting signals through the entire house. Even during the night, when everyone is asleep, the router continues its work. Devices communicate with it. Background applications update. Networks refresh their connections. To the human eye, nothing appears to be happening, but the environment around the body remains active. Now, from a purely practical point of view, and this technology allows modern life to function smoothly. It connects people, delivers information instantly, and supports countless daily activities. But from the perspective of rest and stillness, this constant digital activity can quietly influence the atmosphere of a sleeping space. The Buddha repeatedly taught that the senses play a powerful role in shaping the mind. Sight, sound, touch, even subtle sensations the mind barely notices can influence our internal state. Imagine trying to meditate in the middle of a busy marketplace. Voices echo around you. People walk past. Movement happens everywhere. Even if you close your eyes, the mind still feels the activity around it. Now imagine sitting beside a quiet lake in the early morning. No noise, no movement, only still air and calm water. And the difference in how the mind responds is immediate. The mind naturally becomes quieter when the environment becomes quieter. The same principle applies to sleep. When the environment surrounding the body contains constant signals and electronic communication, the mind remains slightly alert, not fully awake, but not fully surrendered to rest either. This is especially important for older adults. After 60, the brain becomes more sensitive to subtle changes in the environment. Sleep cycles shorten. The deepest stages of sleep become harder to maintain. This is why many older individuals wake up more easily from small disturbances. A faint sound, a flash of light, a sudden vibration. The nervous system reacts faster than it once did. If the sleeping space contains devices constantly communicating with wireless networks, the body may remain in a lighter stage of rest throughout the night. Again, the point is not fear. The Buddha never encouraged fear. Fear clouds the mind and creates more disturbance. Instead, he encouraged observation. Look carefully at the conditions of your life. Notice what creates calm and what creates restlessness. In many modern homes, the router sits very close to bedrooms simply because it provides stronger internet signals in that location. But moving it a few meters away from the sleeping area can change the atmosphere of the room. Some people choose to place the router in a living room or hallway instead. Others simply turn the router off during the night. When the house sleeps, the network rests too. This small adjustment creates a surprising difference, and the room becomes quieter in ways that are difficult to describe but easy to feel. No blinking lights, no constant digital activity, just stillness. This principle reflects a deeper Buddhist truth. The mind mirrors its environment. If the environment is chaotic, the mind becomes chaotic. If the environment is calm, the mind gradually becomes calm as well. This is why monks carefully chose places for meditation and rest. They avoided crowded, noisy areas whenever possible. They sought mountains, forests, and quiet monasteries where the mind could settle naturally. Of course, modern life rarely allows such complete isolation, but even within a modern home, we can still make small choices that support calm. The bedroom does not need to be a place filled with invisible digital traffic. It can become a refuge from that activity, a quiet corner of life where the mind knows nothing will demand its attention. The Buddha once said that peace begins when the causes of disturbance are removed. Sometimes those causes are emotional, sometimes they are mental, but sometimes they are simply environmental. A device placed a few meters farther away, a router turned off before sleep, a room that finally becomes still. When the environment becomes still, the mind begins to follow. And when the mind becomes still, the body can finally enter the deep rest it has been waiting for all day. 4. Artificial light. At night confuses the body. One of the quietest disturbances in modern bedrooms is something so common that most people never even think about it. Light, not sunlight, not the warm glow of a candle, but the small artificial lights that surround us at night. A digital clock glowing on the nightstand, the blue light from a phone screen, a charging indicator blinking beside the bed, a television left on standby, the soft glow of a tablet. Individually, these lights may seem insignificant. They appear small, harmless, almost invisible in the darkness. But the human body was not designed to sleep surrounded by artificial light. For thousands of years, night meant darkness. When the sun disappeared, the world gradually became quiet and dim. The body understood this rhythm instinctively. Darkness signaled the brain that it was time to slow down, time to repair, time to sleep. The Buddha lived in a world where this natural rhythm was respected automatically. When evening came, the monasteries became calm. Lamps were dimmed, conversations became quieter, activities slowly ended, and the environment itself began preparing the mind for rest. This gradual transition from light to darkness allowed the body to settle naturally. But modern life has quietly disrupted this ancient rhythm. Today, many bedrooms never truly become dark. Screens glow, LED indicators blink, streetlights shine through the windows, phones light up with notifications during the night. Even a small amount of artificial light can confuse the brain. Inside the human body, there is a delicate biological clock that regulates sleep and wakefulness. When darkness arrives, the brain releases a hormone called melatonin. This hormone signals the body that it is time to rest. Melatonin lowers alertness. It slows certain processes in the body. It prepares the mind for deep sleep. But artificial light interferes with this signal. When the eyes detect light, even faint light, the brain can interpret it as a sign that morning is approaching. As a result, melatonin production becomes weaker. Sleep becomes lighter. The body struggles to reach the deepest stages of rest. Many people do not notice this immediately. They simply wake up feeling tired, restless, or slightly foggy the next morning. They assume it is part of aging. But often, the sleeping environment itself is quietly interfering with the body's natural rhythms. The Buddha often emphasized the importance of living in harmony with natural cycles, day for activity, night for rest. He encouraged people to observe the rhythms of nature because those rhythms support balance in the mind and body. When we surround ourselves with artificial light late into the night, we break that rhythm. The mind remains stimulated, the body remains partially alert, and deep rest becomes harder to achieve. This effect becomes even more noticeable as we grow older. After 60, the body produces less melatonin than it once did. Sleep becomes naturally lighter and more fragile. Small disturbances that once meant nothing can now disrupt an entire night of rest. This is why older adults often become more sensitive to light during the night. A small screen lighting up across the room, a blinking LED on a device, a digital clock shining directly toward the bed. These lights may appear tiny, but the brain still notices them. Even if the person does not wake up fully, the mind may remain in a lighter stage of sleep, rather than entering the deeper stages where true healing occurs. The Buddha did not speak about melatonin or biological clocks in scientific language, but he clearly understood the relationship between the environment and the state of the mind. In Buddhist practice, darkness is often associated with calm and introspection. When the lights dim, the mind begins to withdraw from constant stimulation. The senses relax, thoughts slow down, the body prepares for rest. But when light continues shining through the night, the mind receives mixed signals. Part of the brain believes it should be resting. Another part believes it should remain alert. This confusion creates restless sleep. The solution is often very simple. Allow the bedroom to become truly dark. Turn off unnecessary lights. Remove glowing electronics from the bedside. And use curtains or blinds to block excessive outdoor light if necessary. Even covering small blinking LEDs can make a difference. Some people are surprised by how powerful darkness can be. When the room becomes completely dark, the body responds almost immediately. Breathing slows, muscles relax, sleep deepens. The mind finally understands that the day has ended. In many Buddhist monasteries, the sleeping area was intentionally kept extremely simple and dim, not because monks feared technology or light, but because they understood something very basic about the human mind. The mind rests best when the world becomes quiet and dark, and sometimes restoring that natural darkness is one of the most powerful ways to protect the peace of the night. If 5, too many electronic objects create a restless space. If you look beside the average bed today, you will often see something that would have been unimaginable just a few decades ago. A small collection of electronic devices. A phone charging beside the pillow, a smartwatch placed on a charging stand, perhaps a tablet resting on the nightstand, a lamp with touch controls, a wireless speaker. Sometimes even a smart assistant listening for voice commands. All of these devices may seem small and harmless by themselves, but when several of them gather in the same place, something subtle begins to happen. The space, meant for rest, slowly transforms into a space filled with activity. Cables run across the table, screens glow faintly, devices charge throughout the night. Signals move between electronics, and even when nothing appears to be happening, the room contains a constant layer of technological movement. From a modern perspective, this arrangement may feel convenient. Everything we need sits within reach. But from a Buddhist perspective, this kind of environment raises an important question. Is this space designed for peace or for stimulation? The Buddha spoke often about the influence of surroundings on the condition of the mind. He understood that human beings are deeply affected by the spaces they inhabit. When a room is crowded with objects, the mind feels crowded. When a space becomes simple and open, the mind begins to relax. This is why Buddhist monasteries were designed with extraordinary simplicity. The sleeping area contained only what was necessary, nothing extra, nothing distracting, and nothing competing for attention. The reason was not strict discipline or minimalism for its own sake. The reason was psychological clarity. Every object in a room silently communicates with the mind. Some objects bring calm, others bring stimulation. When a bedroom becomes filled with electronic devices, the mind senses that the environment is active. It may not be a loud activity, but it is still activity. A charging phone reminds the mind of messages and responsibilities. A tablet beside the bed reminds the mind of unfinished tasks. A television in the room suggests entertainment and stimulation. Even when the screens are off, the mind associates these objects with alertness and engagement. The Buddha often described the mind as something that easily follows the direction of its surroundings. If you sit in a noisy marketplace, your thoughts become scattered. If you sit in a quiet forest, your thoughts gradually become calm. The same principle applies to the bedroom. When the sleeping space contains many devices connected to the outside world, the mind remains subtly connected as well. Part of the brain stays ready to respond, ready to check something, ready to react, ready to engage again. This quiet readiness prevents the full surrender that deep sleep requires. As people grow older, this effect becomes more noticeable. The body becomes more sensitive to its environment. Sleep becomes lighter. The nervous system reacts more easily to disturbances. Many older adults describe a strange feeling when they enter certain rooms. Some rooms feel peaceful immediately, yet other rooms feel tense or restless without any obvious reason. Often the difference lies in the environment itself. A room filled with electronics, glowing lights, and constant activity can create an atmosphere that subtly keeps the mind alert. But when unnecessary objects are removed, something remarkable happens. The room begins to breathe again. The space opens. The mind senses the difference immediately. Many people who simplify their sleeping space notice that they fall asleep faster. They wake up less during the night. They feel calmer before bed. This change does not happen because electronics are evil or dangerous. Technology is simply a tool. The real issue is placement. Tools designed for daytime activity do not always belong in the place designed for nighttime restoration. And the Buddha encouraged people to practice what he called wise simplicity. Wise simplicity does not mean rejecting modern life. It means understanding which things support peace and which things quietly disturb it. A bedroom does not need multiple devices glowing, charging, and communicating through the night. It needs calm, it needs space, it needs quiet. Sometimes the most powerful improvement to sleep is not a new mattress or a new supplement. Sometimes it is simply removing what does not belong there. A phone moved farther away, a tablet left in another room, a television turned off and unplugged, a collection of charging cables removed from the bedside. These changes may seem small, but the mind notices them immediately. The room begins to feel different. The atmosphere becomes lighter, and the mind senses that the environment is no longer asking for attention. In the Buddhist teachings, peace often begins with letting go of unnecessary attachments, letting go of unnecessary complexity, letting go of objects that quietly pull the mind away from stillness. When the sleeping space becomes simple again, the mind remembers how to rest. And when the mind rests, the body finally receives the deep recovery it has been waiting for all day. 6. The body heals only when the mind fully lets go. Many people believe that sleep simply means lying down and closing the eyes. But the body does something far more complex during the night. Sleep is the time when the body repairs itself. Cells regenerate, hormones rebalance, the immune system resets, muscles recover from the stress of the day, and the brain clears waste products that accumulate during waking hours. In other words, the night is when the body quietly restores itself. But this restoration only happens when sleep becomes deep enough. The body must enter what scientists call the deepest stages of sleep. In these stages, the brain slows dramatically. Breathing becomes steady. The nervous system shifts into repair mode. When this deep rest happens, the body wakes up refreshed. But if the mind remains partially alert during the night, the body never fully enters this healing state. The Buddha understood something essential about the relationship between rest and awareness. He taught that the mind cannot experience true peace while it is still holding on to activity. Even when the body lies still, the mind may continue working. It thinks, it anticipates, it listens for disturbances. It remains ready to react. When this happens, the body may appear to be sleeping, but the deeper levels of rest never fully arrive. Modern life makes this problem more common than people realize. The bedroom today often contains many subtle forms of stimulation. Phones receiving signals, lights glowing faintly, devices quietly running. Even the mental awareness of these objects can keep the brain slightly alert. The brain evolved to protect us. For thousands of years, human survival depended on remaining aware of the environment, even while resting. If a predator approached during the night, the brain had to wake the body instantly. This protective system still exists inside us today. When the environment feels active or uncertain, the brain refuses to relax completely, and it keeps part of the mind awake, monitoring the surroundings. This state is sometimes called light sleep. A person in light sleep may not realize anything is wrong. They may not wake up fully, but the brain never descends into the deepest stage where the most powerful healing occurs. As people grow older, this issue becomes even more important. After the age of 60, the body already spends less time in deep sleep than it once did. This is a natural part of aging. But when the sleeping environment adds additional stimulation, deep sleep becomes even shorter. The result is a cycle many older adults recognize. They go to bed, they fall asleep, but they wake up several times during the night. Sometimes they feel restless without knowing why. Sometimes they wake up feeling as if they never truly rested, and they assume it is simply part of getting older. But the environment surrounding the body often plays a larger role than people realize. The Buddha spoke often about the importance of letting go. Most people understand this idea in an emotional sense: letting go of anger, letting go of attachment, letting go of worry. But letting go also applies to the physical environment. When the bedroom contains constant signals, glowing lights, and devices waiting for attention, the mind finds it harder to release control. It remains connected to the outside world. Deep rest requires the opposite. It requires the feeling that nothing needs to be done, nothing needs to be checked, nothing needs to be responded to. The world can wait until morning. When the mind reaches this state, something powerful happens, and the nervous system finally relaxes. The brain allows the body to enter its deepest stage of repair. Breathing slows, muscles release tension, the heart rate becomes steady. This is the stage of sleep where the body performs its most important healing work. But if the environment quietly keeps the mind alert, the body may never fully reach this state. This is why creating a calm, sleeping environment becomes more important with age. It is not about fear of technology. It is about respecting the natural needs of the body. When the room becomes quiet, dark, and free from unnecessary stimulation, the brain receives a clear message. The day is finished. Nothing needs your attention right now. You are safe to rest. The Buddha described true rest as a form of surrender, not surrender in a negative sense, but surrender in the sense of releasing control, releasing effort, allowing the mind to settle naturally. When the sleeping environment supports this surrender, the body remembers how to heal itself. And often, the most powerful step toward deeper sleep is not something we add. It is something we remove the signals, remove the glowing lights, remove the devices that keep the mind connected to activity. What remains is something the body has always understood: stillness. And in that stillness, true healing finally begins. 7. Wisdom begins when we question our habits. One of the most powerful teachings of the Buddha is surprisingly simple. He taught people not to blindly follow habits. Most human beings move through life repeating the same routines every day without ever questioning them. And we do things because everyone else does them. We place objects in certain places because that is how society has quietly trained us to live. Over time, these habits become invisible. They feel normal. They feel automatic. But the Buddha encouraged something very different. He encouraged awareness. Awareness means pausing for a moment and observing your life as if you were seeing it for the first time. Look at your actions, look at your surroundings, look at your routines, and ask yourself a simple question. Is this truly helping my well-being, or is it simply something I have never questioned? This is how wisdom begins. Many of the objects that now sit beside our beds entered our lives gradually. First came the alarm clock, then the radio, then the television in the bedroom, then the mobile phone, then the smartphone, and then tablets, smart speakers, wireless chargers, and other devices. None of these changes happened all at once. They arrived slowly over the years. Each one seemed harmless on its own. But when these objects accumulate in the same space, the bedroom quietly transforms. Instead of being a place of quiet refuge, it becomes another extension of the busy outside world. The Buddha observed that the human mind easily becomes attached to convenience. Convenience feels comfortable. Convenience saves effort. But convenience can also hide subtle forms of disturbance. When the phone sits beside the pillow, it feels convenient. When the Wi-Fi router is close to the bedroom, it feels convenient. When the television sits across from the bed, it feels convenient. But convenience does not always serve peace. And sometimes convenience keeps the mind connected to activity, even when it should be resting. This is why the Buddha often invited people to examine the conditions of their lives carefully. He encouraged them to ask questions that most people never ask. What influences the state of my mind? What in my environment creates calm? What in my environment creates subtle tension? These questions are not meant to create fear. They are meant to create clarity. When a person begins observing their surroundings with awareness, they start to notice things they previously ignored. They notice how certain rooms feel peaceful while others feel restless. They notice how certain habits support deep sleep while others disturb it. They notice how the mind reacts to the presence of certain objects. And this kind of observation is the foundation of wisdom. The Buddha never demanded blind obedience to rules. Instead, he invited people to explore their experience directly. Notice what brings peace. Notice what disturbs it. Then adjust your life accordingly. This principle becomes especially meaningful as we grow older. After 60, life often becomes quieter. Responsibilities slowly decrease. Children grow up. Careers slow down or end. This stage of life offers something precious, the opportunity to simplify. Many people spend their younger years accumulating possessions, responsibilities, and distractions. But wisdom in later life often moves in the opposite direction. Instead of adding more, it begins removing what is unnecessary. Removing noise, removing clutter, removing habits that disturb the mind. And the bedroom becomes a powerful place to begin this process. Look around the room with fresh awareness. What is truly necessary here? What actually supports rest? What quietly pulls the mind back into activity? Many people are surprised when they perform this simple observation. They notice that their sleeping space has slowly filled with objects that do not belong there. Devices meant for work, screens meant for entertainment, cables meant for convenience. None of these things are evil or harmful by themselves, but they carry the energy of activity, and the bedroom is meant to carry the energy of rest. The Buddha often described peace as something that naturally appears when disturbances are removed. You do not need to create peace. You only need to remove the things that disturb it. When unnecessary objects leave the room, the atmosphere changes immediately. The space feels lighter. The mind feels calmer. The body senses that the environment is safe for rest. Wisdom rarely arrives through dramatic change. More often, it arrives through small, quiet decisions. Moving one device away from the bed, turning off unnecessary lights, removing objects that constantly ask for attention. These changes may seem simple, but simplicity is one of the most powerful forms of wisdom. Because when the room becomes simple again, the mind remembers something it has almost forgotten: how to be still. And when the mind becomes still, the body finally receives the deep rest that supports health, clarity, and peace in the years ahead. When people think about danger, they usually imagine something dramatic, something loud, or something obvious, something that forces their attention. But many of the things that quietly influence our health and peace do not announce themselves that way. They sit silently in our homes. They become part of our routine. And because they feel normal, we rarely stop to question them. The Buddha taught that ignorance is not always about lacking intelligence. Often, it is simply about living without awareness. When we stop observing our habits, we allow small disturbances to slowly shape the quality of our lives. This is why awareness is so powerful. Awareness allows us to see what was previously invisible. It allows us to notice how our environment influences our mind, our sleep, and our well-being. Your bedroom is one of the most important spaces in your life. It is where the body restores itself. It is where the mind releases the stress of the day. It is where the nervous system finds the quiet it needs to heal. But this only happens when the environment supports rest. If the room is filled with constant stimulation, signals, glowing screens, and devices asking for attention, the mind never fully lets go. True rest requires something much simpler: stillness, darkness, silence. The Buddhist path was never about rejecting the world. It was about living with wisdom inside it. Technology can serve us during the day, but the mind deserves a few hours every night where nothing demands its attention. Sometimes, the most powerful change in life begins with a very small decision. Move the phone away from the bed. Remove unnecessary electronics. Allow the room to become calm again. You create a space where the body feels safe enough to truly rest. You may discover something surprising. When the environment becomes quiet, the mind follows. And when the mind finally becomes quiet, the body remembers how to heal itself. Peace has always been simple. We only need to remove what quietly stands in its way.